Hi everyone. I'm Ben Ackland, and I'm going to be talking about conversation-driven development in relation to this adventure game. So a little bit about me. I'm a software consultant based in the southwest of the UK. I started out as a Python developer, but have ended up managing many projects over the years and even a handful of products. And my career has kind of gone through sort of web content management systems, mobile apps connected to the real world, on construction sites for corporate events, that kind of thing. And more recently, a sort of transition into this conversational AI and voice interaction space, which I found really interesting and have ended up starting a project on. So what am I going to cover in this talk? Well, I'll look at what I'm doing. I've got a quick audio demo for you and cover some of the challenges that I faced early on. I'll look at why and how I started recording utterances in a database and how I use that information. How the tool set that I use has evolved into a workflow that we're following today. And how this has helped the project and the lessons I've learned along the way. And I'll conclude with what's next for the project and how you can learn more and get involved. So let me tell you a bit about Spaceport Alpha. I'm prototyping a game using voice and conversational AI. And you can kind of think of this as a cross between an audiobook, a sort of narrative-led story, and an adventure game that you interact with and explore. And it's the voice and conversational AI that's providing the interface for interacting with the game characters, exploring the world, and solving puzzles along the way. And our main character, Freddy, is effectively our first virtual assistant. So I'll set the scene. It's about 20 years in the future, the 2040s. You're Emerson, a restaurant owner in Hammersmith, London, and your eyesight is deteriorating. You avoid the hectic kitchen these days. But those eyes, your eyes, hold unique information that simply can't be lost, and you know it. So spaceships are shuttling to and from the moon regularly. And you need to reach Jane, who is based in the lunar city of Ijaya, before someone else does. But you can't attempt that journey yourself. So you're counting on Freddy, your friend's son, and Alvin, a pocket supercomputer, to make it happen. So this is all about voice and audio. So if it's comfortable and safe for you to do so, then feel free to close your eyes for the next minute. I'm just going to play a little bit of audio. You won't miss anything visual. So I want you to imagine that Freddy has just arrived at the departure lounge at a London spaceport. You're going to help him remotely via a secure app on your smartphone. And Freddy needs to find some way to get this pocket supercomputer through security, then get a highly sought-after ticket to board a spaceflight. So you, the player, you're the brains here. He's relying on your logical thinking. And he connects with you as he arrives at the spaceport.
Welcome to Spaceport London Heathrow. Please make yourself comfortable in the reception lounge, and one of our hosts will be with you shortly.
Hi, it's Freddy. I made it. I'm here. What a nightmare those last few days were. I best keep my head down and hope no one recognizes me. That didn't say much, but stressed I needed to get his dear Alvin through security undetected. Where should I start?
So, have a think. What is the first thing you would say to Freddy? How are you going to help him get Alvin through security undetected? If you were playing, you would speak now. Feel free to open your eyes again if you close them. Maybe you'd ask Freddy, what can you see? Who can you talk to? Where's Alvin? Do I speak now? As you can imagine, there are many, many initial utterances that someone might say to the game to interact with it. And this really is the fundamental challenge that I discovered early on. How do I know what the player might say? Do I guess the obvious utterances? I'm using machine learning. I'm training a conversational AI model. How do I start training it? Maybe there's some existing material I can use. Maybe I can ask some contacts to try an initial version. That makes sense, but how do I give outsiders something to try that isn't frustrating? How do I know when it's ready for them to try? So in the beginning, I hacked together a rough demo. I kind of played through it myself, explored it myself, and it was holding together reasonably well. I could interact with a few things. And then I asked a friend who knew about the project and knew about the technology that I was using to try it as well. And it was a completely different experience. He tried very different things. He said different things, but he also meant different things when he said them. He wanted to do different things. And it opened my eyes to the variation that's going to exist when people try this out. I did record that call and I picked through the audio, and it was really valuable and I learned a lot from it, and it helped me to iterate on the game, on that very first version. But that's very time consuming, and it's not very data driven. So then I started to think about, sort of reflect on test-driven software development. So how do we define what we want a system to do and then test whether it's doing it? And I had this local NLU initially, and I started logging all of the utterances from myself and other test players, and what I call the action and the context, the kind of intent and the entities that were coming out of the NLU for their utterances. And importantly, I started flagging which were incorrect to help me test and improve what I had. And this certainly felt more efficient. And in the process, I discovered Rasa open source for NLU as well. And at one point, I actually had both the local NLU and Rasa NLU running, and I was trying them side by side to understand the framework and to improve the overall experience. And so what I kind of had here was a sort of test-driven development driven by these utterances. So then I spent some more time learning about Rasa, attending the summit, took developer certification, prototyped a couple of bots, and in the process discovered Rasa X, which, if you don't know, is a tool for analyzing conversations and NLU. And in the process, I realized that this was an obvious step on from where I'd started. I had this GUI that I could use to perform both the similar task of reviewing the conversations and flagging them, but also insights into how well the NLU was working and an ability to read through full conversations and etc. and flag and label, etc. So as soon as I realized that that was what I wanted to do, I needed a way to connect the game engine that I had, the kind of state machine for the game, and the Rasa stack and the Rasa NLU. And so I developed a simple custom connector that's really just a message channel between the two, sending to Rasa the speech or the text from the player and getting back information about their intent and entities and other data to use in the interactions in the game. So this is our development workflow now, and I'll just talk you through this in a few key stages. So I start out with a play test. I'm still doing these over Zoom or in person, looking to improve on that. And in that process, the conversations are being recorded in the Rasa framework. Then we can use RasaX to do three key things. We can review the conversations as a whole. So that gives a nice insight into the sort of big picture as to what the player is trying to do. The journey that they're going through, is it similar to what I envisaged? Is it different? And if lessons come out of that, or maybe new ideas, they potentially go in the backlog for further consideration. We review the NLU inbox. That allows us to look at specific examples of utterances from the player. We saw that a moment ago, what they're referencing and whether the NLU is correctly identifying the intent and entities there. And we want to remove player friction in the process. So, we flag the obvious issues there, and that helps me to prioritize what we'll work on next. And then we can also review the intent insights to look at how RasaX has highlighted any issues with the training data that we've got and suggest where we can make improvements. So we take all of that into account in determining what we're going to work on next. In the process, I also have what's called a sort of completeness report. So this is I'll talk a little bit about it on the next slide, but it's trying to understand where we are more broadly in the completeness of interactions with this small world that I've created. So think of it as a demo world, and there are a number of interactions there that I want to implement to tell the story. And I've got a way of semi-automating a sort of measurement of that. And so we think about where we are on that, where we're trying to get to in the overall scope of this project, this prototype, and that helps to prioritize too. So we take all of that into account, and we're now in a position to start working on improving the NLU, marking up more examples, adding new examples, maybe even new intent, and equally working on the engine. So what reaction do we get in the game when the player has provides a certain intent? Maybe we need to update the dialogue in the game to guide the player better or add new dialogue. And maybe we need a whole new interaction, a whole new object or something in the game that they're going to interact with. So at this point, we can do another internal play test, and that's really an opportunity for QA. Is everything still holding together? Does it feel right? How are these new things working? And if I'm happy with that, then deploy it locally in a separate environment so that it's ready for another play test and repeat the process. So I talked about completeness. Really, what I'm trying to understand here, sort of from a project management point of view, is how many bases does the assistant that I have, Freddy, cover at the moment? How many of the things in the environment, what I call the kind of context, and how many of the intents that the player might have, do we have implementations for? Where are there holes? Where do we need to make improvements? And this is a progress metric for me to gauge where I am in the overall intention of the demo. And it helps identify gaps as well. And you can see I'm using green, orange, and red to indicate where things are implemented or aren't implemented, or orange in the middle where they need more work, in my opinion. And this requires some manual intervention, of course, some manual indication of where things might be better. So going back to those initial challenges, how do I know what the player might say? How do I start training something, and how do I give outsiders something to try that isn't frustrating? Well, my approach was to seed the training data myself, and then as soon as possible to ask someone close to the project, as I mentioned, to try it out. And I prompted them. I tried to encourage them to try different interactions. I wanted to see if they could break the game, if they could touch on things that didn't exist, etc. And then I took that, improved the prototype, and I've given a sort of notional by 10% here. So maybe if I had 10 interactions already, maybe one more was added, or maybe 10% more training data. I'm just trying to give a feel for the scale of each iteration. And then I asked that same person to give it a go again, and tried to discover what they thought of it after the improvements, and tried to find someone else slightly further from the project to try it out. And I continued to repeat this. I continue now to do so, involving more and more people for a broader audience, so further away from the project, and following that workflow that I went through, so keeping tab on completeness. So I have an idea when I'm going to get to that playable demo that I can release. So bringing this all together to some degree, I'd like to play you another short example, and this is of me interacting with Freddy.
That didn't say much, but stressed I needed to get his dear Alvin through security undetected. Where should I start?
Hi, Freddy. Tell me what you can see.
I'm in the waiting area, a small lounge. To my left, there are some sofas, and there's a door to a WC in the corner. In front of me, there's a check-in desk with a friendly-looking host behind it and a barriered entrance. On my right is a video display that looks like it's playing a showreel for what's to come. Better than the mainstream news, I guess. There's also a well-stocked fridge.
Okay, let's go check out that fridge.
The fridge is jam-packed with bottles of original Coca-Cola. My guess is there'll be a Coke badge on the side of the spaceship too.
If you're thirsty, there's no harm in grabbing a drink, I suppose.
Not quite the taste of a new generation, but still good.
Can you see anything of use here?
It's a fridge full of ice-cold bottles of Coke, with a metal bottle opener resting on top.
Okay, grab that bottle opener then.
Boy, that may come in handy.
What more can you tell me about Alvin?
Apparently he's a powerful computer. Looks a bit like a small dumbbell from the gym.
Can you open Alvin or turn him on?
I can't see any obvious way to open him or turn it on. If you don't know, I think we're going to need some help.
So hopefully that gave a bit of an example as to where I'm going with this. What's next for the project? Well, I'll be adding additional interactions and dialogue. That's a continual process. And it's important to start to make this available to more and more people. And I want to do that through a more common web interface so that I can start some sort of external testing, broader testing. And as part of that, scalable deployment and an element of a sort of closed beta program so that I can go from a handful of playtesters now, 10 or so, to 100 and then to 1,000 if people are enjoying it and want to share it. And as a side note, if you're interested in giving it a go, then please do check out the website. Please do sign up. It'd be great to have you on board. If I get some initial traction there, I'd like to raise funds to complete a first episode and see this through to a really sort of solid experience. And in the process, share code and guides and maybe create tools so that others can do this too. So in summary, my two key takeaways so far are: share your assistant early, track real conversations, every conversation that people have with it, and gradually expand your audience. And the way I did that was away from the project team and people that I knew. And establish that workflow so that you can repeatedly test, review, and improve the interactions that your users are having with your assistant. So to learn more about conversation-driven development, do check out the Rasa website. If you're interested in this, in what I'm doing, the general space, then please do connect with me on Twitter. And if you'd like to learn more about the game or get involved in the project, do check out the website. Thanks for joining me.